everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Hate Read. I'm Anna.
And I'm Em. Every fortnight here on Hate Read, one of us challenges the other to read a book that we think they'll hate. This fortnight, I challenged Anna to read Tortilla Flats by John Steinbeck. So first things first, Anna, did you finish the book?
I did, somehow. It was a miracle, but yes, I did finish this book. It was probably one of the worst experiences of my life.
Really? I did not think it was that bad.
As we discussed in a previously recorded but future episode, have a very strong hatred for John Steinbeck, which is not at all related to his writing style, but more of like the contents of his writing.
As a person.
Yeah. Just like so I was already struggling with that, and then it was like very reminiscent of assigned reading in school. So I was just like,
yeah, for
I don't
sure.
want anything to do with this. I didn't even read the books I was assigned to in college. Like, why would I read this for fun?
See, I definitely had the assigned reading feel. I was definitely like, okay, I gotta get through this. I need to be able to do my report on this tomorrow.
I need to be able to talk about the motifs in this book.
Right. Like, I was like, oh, what are the themes? Oh, what are the symbols?
Drunk. That's the theme. Drunk.
Yeah, the theme is drunk. The symbol is wine.
Yeah, oh my god. Ugh. So, this wasn't the most enjoyable fortnight I've ever had.
No.
Well, let's be real. This wasn't the most enjoyable, past 3 days because I don't read the books ahead of time.
Yeah, I finished this 7 minutes before we started recording.
Nice. Oh, gosh. Yeah, and it's one of those books, again, that's a little bit frustrating, perhaps, for our readers, or our listeners. Ooh, is anyone reading our podcast? For our listeners, because, again, there's not, a ton going on in this story that is, summary worthy. It's kind of composed of a series of scenes or vignettes that are happening.
And it's funny, did you read our fan mail that we got this week?
Oh my gosh, our first fan mail.
And by fan mail, I mean your husband sending us an email. Did you read this?
He's so dutiful.
No, but did you read it though?
I did read it. I don't remember exactly what it said other than feeling vaguely annoyed, but that's how I usually feel about him. So let's pull it out.
It was an anonymous. Here, I've got it up. Hold on.
Okay, yeah. I know most people probably do this at the end of their episodes, but we're going to do it at the beginning because it's so special.
Well, because it relates to the fact that this isn't really a book that we can summarize very much. Yeah. So this is the email we got.
Uh-huh.
Hi, Hate Readcast. Long-time listener, second-time emailer. I have listened to all of your episodes, and I had a note as someone who is following along. I noticed you gals use a lot of pronouns when going over the stories, and it is sometimes hard to follow along with all the hijinks. In future podcasts, could you keep in mind that some of your listeners haven't read the books and might need help following the story, using name repetition and labels more frequently given the audio format? Or you could put some kind of funny character guide in the description on the audio. Or you could create an entire wiki with maps and spreadsheets. Thanks, Anon.
What a butt. First of all, his first email, it's his second time emailer. His first email was literally just, hello.
I mean, we don't want to discourage anybody else listening from writing in and
giving us constructive criticism, but
and I wanted to bring this up now because okay, noted, too many pronouns, got it, but I feel like this one is going to be somewhat confusing just because there's not much plot. So It's kind of like, sorry, we're going to ignore you for this episode, but in the future we will try our best.
We'll make very beautiful spreadsheets.
Mm-hmm. Color coordinated.
We'll email them just to you, anonymous emailer.
Oh man.
Actually, considering anonymous emailer's career, maybe he should be the one making.
That was kind of my thought too. If he wants spreadsheets, he can read the damn books and make some spreadsheets for us.
Yeah. Let's call him out here right now. If you are really serious about being our number one fan, we will see some visualized data on these books sometime soon. Thank you. Put that PhD to work. Okay, so anyways, this book. Do we
Yeah.
really have to talk about it? Can we
I
just
guess. I kind of just like I almost don't even want to talk about it. More just want to talk about the ideas around it, but
Well, yes, I was reading, I was doing a lot of really intensive research on this book by reading the very short Wikipedia article.
mhm.
And apparently, he wrote a foreword to a later version of this book,
Oh, I have that one.
the 1937 version.
Mhm. Yeah, that's the one I was reading.
Yeah, so that's the one where I don't think I don't know what version I read, but it certainly didn't have this foreword.
Mhm.
Um, but he basically says that, like, it did not occur to me that paisanos were curious or quaint, dispossessed or underdogish. They are people whom I know and like, people who merge successfully with their habitat, good people of laughter and kindness, of honest lusts and direct eyes. If I have done them harm by telling a few of their stories, I am sorry. It will never happen again. Which is like not really an apology.
Yeah, that's also missing the big part of this forward where he talks about how he was really good friends with this little piojo, which, was a nice, kind, brown little boy who lived
Oh,
alone with his elder sister, who was, as they called him, a whore lady, or as they called her, a whore lady. And
oh, how
he
nice.
goes into great detail about their life and how, like, how much fun they had going over to his house and getting water out of the toilet because that's where they got their cooking water from. And I mean, like,
Wonderful. Wonderful.
so you missed the whole, like, I have black friends moment in this forward,
Uh,
too.
you know what? I'm really glad I did. I'm really glad I didn't have to read
Yeah,
through that.
it was
I could
good.
barely make it through the original preface of this book that he wrote for the book as part of the book. Like,
He also calls the people who are into this book for the wrong reasons literary slummers, which I feel
mm.
should be our tagline,
Ooh, I like that.
right?
Hate read literary slummers.
Right? Like, that's
That's
essentially what we're
good.
doing.
Can someone put that on a T-shirt for us?
Send us a
Hey,
t-shirt.
yeah, send us a T-shirt.
Isn't it supposed to be the other way around? Aren't we supposed to start making t-shirts? Not begging our few listeners to dress us?
This is a different kind of podcast. This is a podcast
Where
for
you guys do all the
2018
work.
where our listeners owe us.
Yes.
mm. I think, no, it's kind of like, what's the character's name? Pilon? Am I saying that correctly?
I think that's correct.
Yeah,
Pilon.
Pilon, how he like works through all of this crazy logic as well to
Yes.
to make it to justify his thieving and drinking. Um, such is my gift of logic that our listeners must send us t-shirts with our taglines on them.
It is the right and moral thing to do.
Correct. I mean, really, you were going to spend the money anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Might as well. Isn't it
Spend
better
it
to
on.
gift your friends than it is
Yes.
to keep selfishly for yourself?
We're
I don't know.
really giving you a gift by asking you to send us things because we're giving you the opportunity to give generously, which will make you feel better about yourself.
Something like that.
Incidentally, that is also an annoying, obnoxious thing to say, and a summary of about 80% of the hijinks in this book.
Yeah, the quote unquote hijinks, which are essentially ways I can steal money to buy wine during Prohibition.
Which, like, cool, I get it, but also I don't know if I need to read a 300-page book about it.
Yeah, it was a lot of same. But, okay, so I guess I'll do my best to summarize this book.
Now that we're like 10 minutes into this podcast.
Yeah, well, whatever. Professional podcasting. So I guess the main character of this book, well, I guess, okay, the main character of this book is Danny's house, I guess, to be fair. But Danny himself, the person that owns the house, he is a paisano who has just come back from war. And I believe this takes place after World War I. But
Yes.
let me pull up here how John Steinbeck defines paisanos so that we're all on the same page. What is a paisano? He is a mixture of Spanish, Indian, Mexican, and assorted Caucasian bloods. His ancestors have lived in California for 100 or 2 years. He speaks English with a paisano accent and Spanish with a paisano accent. When questioned concerning his race, he indignantly claims pure Spanish blood and rolls up his sleeve to show that the soft inside of his arm is nearly white. His color, like that of a well-browned meerschaum pipe, he ascribes to sunburn. He is a paisano, and he lives in that uphill district above the town of Monterey called Tortilla Flat, although it isn't a flat at all.
Also not made out of tortillas.
This is the most disappointing thing about this book. Tortilla Flat is not a real place made out of tortillas. Oh my god. It is a town, though, in Arizona.
Huh.
In
Weird.
the Superstition Mountains.
Ooh, spooky.
In Maricopa County. Anyway, I'll read about that later, I suppose. So, Danny comes back from war to discover that his grandfather has left him 2 houses upon his grandfather's death. Danny, for some reason, immediately forgets that fact and gets insanely drunk, vandalizes.
It's not for some reason, it's that every character in this book is a moron.
Yes, every character in this book is not the most intelligent person I've ever met before. He immediately decides to spend all of his money on wine and gets drunk and behaves in such a disorderly fashion that he is sent to jail, where he and the jailer get drunk and leave the jail together to drink more wine. And as the jailer falls into a drunken stupor, Danny escapes, runs into the woods, and comes across his old friend from before the war, Pilon, who they have this discussion, and through the discussion, Danny remembers he owns 2 houses and invites Pilon to live in the second house. Because apparently it is a great status symbol for one to not only own a home, but to be able to rent that home. So he tricks Pilon into renting this home from him for $15 a month, which Pilon knows that he'll never be able to pay, and Danny knows that Pilon will never be able to pay, but whatever.
Probably not as low by like 1900 standards, but...
Let's see what it was worth. $15 in... This was after World War I, so in like, let's just say the 1920s to round up.
Sure, yeah.
So that would have been about $195.65 in today's money.
Okay, so that's like a very, very low rent
That's
anyway.
a pretty cheap house. So yeah, so $15 for a month's rent. That's not too bad, I guess. Except that everyone apparently in Tortilla Flat is unemployed and has no way to gain money.
Yeah,
except for by doing odd jobs.
Very, very strange.
Yeah.
Like, things seem to be kind of priced at random. And, yeah, no one works. They just kind of steal things and then sometimes buy those things from each other. It's a very strange economy.
It was very confusing. I just kind of went with the flow when it came to the money conversation. So Danny invites Pilon to live in his second home, and Pilon not immediately, but Pilon then goes out and finds a third friend, Pablo, I think.
Pablo, who was Pilon and Pablo and Danny all signed up for the war together. So they were friends before they went up to war.
And Joe
Pilon
Portuguese.
And Pablo. No, he didn't go with them to sign up.
I thought he was
in the war. But it was Pablo.
Because they had this line at the end of the preface that said, and Big Joe, as shall be later made clear, went to jail. So I think it was Pilon, Big Joe, and Danny who signed up together, but Pablo was also their friend from before. I don't know.
Hold on. Oh, no, you're right. Gosh darn, you read this book so much better than I did.
I'm a very close reader.
I don't remember anything from this book. Okay,
That's probably for the best. It's not... So Pilon comes across Pablo somewhere, like in the woods, because apparently, apparently 75% of the people in Tortilla Flat just sleep outside in the woods.
Yeah,
where they can find some pine needles, I suppose. And so he comes across Pablo, he tricks him out of some wine, and then says, hey, for the low price of $15 a month, I will let you live with me in the house I'm renting from Danny. They kind of go on in this manner where they keep recruiting friends to come live with them under the guise of the last guy will pay the rent for us. So I think by the time everything is said and done, we have Danny, the homeowner, and then Pilon, Pablo, Jesus Maria, the pirate, Big Joe.
No, not the pirate, just pirate.
Just pirate, my mistake. Pirate and then Big Joe.
Which here's my question about pirate. Well, are we going to get into how each of them came to the house, or are we just going to skip over that?
I guess we can because, well, okay, so Pilon and Pablo, we kind of discussed.
Well, and then they burn the house down.
Oh, yeah, and then they burn
the second house down by leaving a candle. Well, I think that's once they have Jesus Maria with them.
Yeah,
right?
So once they trick Jesus Maria into coming to live with them, which is a very similar situation to Pablo, like they find him in the street and they trick him into giving them wine, and they all get drunk and fall asleep and burn the house down. While Danny is next door sleeping with the woman that lives next door at her house.
I was confused by that as well, like the geography of this, because at one point they say that Danny's first house, so we'll call it like house A and house B, right?
Mm-hmm.
So house A is next door.
Get those pronouns in.
House A is next door to Mrs. Morales' house and shares like this, so they can cut a hole in the fence and steal her chickens and whatever.
Yes.
But then House B is also...
No, Emily, they borrow the chickens.
Oh, right. Sorry. They borrow the chickens. But then House B is also next door to Mrs. Morales' house, and they can steal chickens from there. So is like Mrs. Morales' house behind the houses, and it's just like a bigger lot and connected to the two? Or is it like, I didn't understand how that was physically possible.
Envisioned it as like a little compound with the two houses, either the house A and house B next to each other, or one behind the other, just like somehow in the same yard, and they were fenced in together. Okay. And then Mrs. Morales lived next door.
I'm willing to accept that as an explanation.
It's all very higgledy-piggledy. I don't...
There was not a city planner involved in the creation of Tortilla Flats, I don't think.
Sadly, I don't believe there was. It's kind of the wild, wild west down there in regards to real estate, I think. So Jesus Maria, they trick into living with them. And then Pirate is the fourth one, who, poor Pirate, is this mentally disabled character, I believe he was being portrayed as. He was described in the book as his, what did they say? Like his head had grown too big for his brain or something.
Yeah.
Or his head grew too fast. That. Yeah, or something. Something, I don't know, just really goofy. But the implication being that Pirate was not capable of making, he's very culpable to the wiles of Danny and his gang. And so Pirate was this very hardworking individual who lived in a chicken coop with 5 dogs. And every day he would take his wheelbarrow and go out into the woods to chop firewood or some sort of like kindling or something.
Kindling, I think. Yeah.
Yes.
Kindling.
That earned him a quarter every day. And he was saving his quarters because he once had a dog. He once had a dog that got sick. And he prayed to Saint Francis of Assisi, who is the patron saint of animals, to help save this dog. And the dog immediately started to show signs of getting better. And so he vowed to buy a golden candlestick and dedicate it to St. Francis at the church one day, which I think was going to cost him 1,000 quarters. But apparently, like, the dog got better and then was hit by a car and killed, like, a few days later, so...
But you're still following through with the whole candlestick thing.
Yeah, so he's been working really hard, and he has, like, a treasure, and so they call him Pirate.
Well, but here's my question about Pirate, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he has this treasure of quarters, which is buried somewhere in the woods. It very specifically says Pilon is the only one who, like, figures out that he must have a treasure somewhere because Pilon pays attention to everything.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like the whole town knows that he has a secret treasure somewhere, so why the fuck do they call him Pirate? Like, what is that about?
That's a good question. I didn't think of that. Yeah, Pilon is like that old biddy that sits on their porch and just like
Yeah.
watches everyone's comings and goings, and he
So, like, no
realizes
one
that
else
pirates never
realizes the
spent.
pirate has this stash.
Yeah,
Pilon is like, oh, I've put it together. He never spends the quarters. He must have all of these quarters somewhere. So it's not like that's why they call him pirate because he has a treasure stash. Although that would make sense if people knew about it, but like that's not it. So why is he called pirate? Like what is the situation?
maybe he only had one good leg and the other was just a piece of wood, or a hook for a hand, or
I
an
feel
eye
like if
patch
that
of
was the
some
case, one of those
sort.
things would have been relayed to us, the audience.
He just, I don't know. It's just one of those nicknames that
I mean,
sticks.
of the people in this town, he's pretty much the only one who doesn't routinely steal things from people. So he
That's
seems
true.
like the
He's the least
appropriate pirate.
piratey. I mean, at least it was like pirate and not like simpleton or something like.
Not like Big Joe Portuguese. Not
Yeah,
like that, where
yeah.
his last
There was a
name
little.
is just a racist term. Like, not like that.
Yeah, there's a little bit more creativity put into pirate's nickname. And I also liked his dogs' names. Let me find a
Yes,
list of
his
his
dogs
dogs'
were the
names.
best.
What chapter is pirate introduced in so I can.
I think it's chapter 7.
Yes, how Danny's friends became a force for good.
Oh, I found them.
Okay, yes. So go ahead and list off those dog names.
So there's Enrique,
Mhm.
Pajarito, Rudolph, Fluff, and Senor Alec Thompson.
And they're very well behaved dogs. They listen to
Yeah.
everything Pirate says, and they share all the food Pirate can find. Because I guess like a lot of the people in the town feel bad for him, and so a lot of the restaurants would give him scraps and stuff.
Yeah.
So he was very well fed, but he would split everything evenly between him and all of his dogs. Everyone got an even share. so, so of course, Danny's friends take advantage of poor Pirate.
Oh, I found it. Sorry, I found why they call him pirate.
Oh,
That's the dumbest reason ever.
go on.
It gives a description of pirate, and then it says they called him the pirate because of his beard. That's such a dumb reason.
That is such a stupid reason. There are so many other, like Harry.
Or even like if we're going with, I don't know. I guess maybe this is more
Lumberjack.
modern. Right. I was gonna say lumberjack. Maybe that's more of a modern thing. I don't associate beards with pirates particularly, but maybe they did back then. I don't know.
I don't know.
But that's it. We solved the mystery.
That is the, yeah. Thank God. Oh gosh. They know that Pirate has this hoard of quarters somewhere. So they get it into their minds that they're going to pretend to be Pirate's friends and invite Pirate to live with them because it'll be so much more comfortable with 4 men and 5 dogs all sleeping in one small house than it would be for Pirate and his dogs to have their own chicken coop, which, you know, whatever. They give him his own little corner of the house for him to sleep on the floor and cuddle with his dogs. They tell these awful stories about how, these hypothetical stories about how they've heard that people have hidden money in the woods before and how that money is always stolen and blah, 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 blah. And basically scare Pirate into digging up his treasure hoard and giving it to the men to protect. But of course their plan backfires because then they all feel really bad and shitty about it, so they do end up protecting his money for him. So like it's kind of had a good moral. Like they didn't get to steal all his quarters for wine, but
I think their plan was just to make him get the money out so he would like spend it
oh yeah, they
and
wanted
like give them some. I don't think they wanted to straight up steal it from him, which is why then when he's like, "Oh, here guys, now it's your job to protect the money," they were like, "Oh, this didn't work at all."
Yeah, actually, we didn't want the responsibility. We just wanted
Right.
the spending power.
Right.
Which, like we said, this book, the characters jump through so many mental hoops to justify their need to only purchase wine. They steal everything else. They only want to lawfully, well, I guess they're not even lawfully purchasing it because it's during Prohibition. But
Right.
from what is the wine maker's name? Tortellini or something?
Yeah, something like that.
He's an Italian who they
Sicilian.
continuously call a Jew because they find him to be miserly. So that's nice.
Yep. They don't call just him a Jew. They call each other a Jew. They call like random women Jewesses. It's really cool and anti-Semitic. It's a lot of fun for everybody.
Yes, yeah. We really enjoyed reading this book written in 1935 about all this anti-Semitism. But
just casual anti-Semitism.
Yeah. I mean, like, I'm sure he didn't mean it. I'm sure it was just all a joke. We just don't get it. We're just not laughing. But what was I gonna say? I don't remember.
We were talking about pirate and
so I wanted to talk about this Tortellini though.
Okay.
Tortellini. What is?
I feel like it's tortellini, but I also feel like it's probably not, and that's just
that's
because I'm
just
hungry.
Pasta. Let's see. It's Torelli.
Close.
So we were all wrong. So I didn't understand really. So Torelli is the guy they continuously go to purchase wine.
Yes.
But he's not a barkeep because this is during Prohibition. I didn't understand really what his role in Tortilla Flat was.
A procurer of goods.
Okay.
Because he also buys like a blanket from them at some point.
Oh,
there's the whole thing with the wife buying the pants, although that's a little bit separate. I think he's kind of like a rum runner, wouldn't be quite the word because he's not moving but I think he's
wine walker.
Yeah. No, I mean I don't think he's like moving the product. I think he's just the end point of rum runners and wine smugglers give to him, and then he distributes to the world.
What a good guy. See, I felt really bad for Torelli this whole book, and he was the villain of the book because
for about half a second.
Yeah. Let's talk about that.
Resolved.
So Danny and his friends are constantly cheating Torelli out of money and harassing him and trying to sleep with his wife, and I think actually successfully sleeping with his wife on a couple occasions in order to obtain more wine. Like Emma said, there's a scene where one of the guys, I think it was Pilon, steals Big Joe's pants right off of Big Joe's drunken body and goes to sell them for wine, and then immediately feels bad about it, and so goes and steals the pants back. So like Torelli has a lot of patience, which I guess maybe he felt like he didn't have an option because he was illegally selling alcohol. Right. But he really put up with a lot from these guys, and so he has this big moment of villainy where Danny becomes disenfranchised, I guess, a little bit with being a homeowner. Like he just doesn't, or not disenfranchised. He becomes disillusioned with being a homeowner, and goes through kind of this depressive slump where he hides from his friends in the woods, steals all of his own things from himself and his friends to sell for wine, drinks all the wine himself. It just like is basically a nuisance to all of Tortilla Flat.
There's like a list of like these rumors of what Danny's been up to, and one of them is like, what was that? The phrasing was so weird. Let me find it real quick. Oh yeah, okay. So like they're going through this list of things that Danny has been rumored to have done over the last night or the last few nights, and they include Danny was in a fight with some soldiers the night before last. Danny has been milking Mrs. Palachico's goat, and Danny committed partial rape last night, which I don't know what partial rape is, but that seems like a pretty big deal. His friends are all kind of like, oh, this is a problem, and then Danny sneaks into the house at night and steals Pilon's shoes while he's sleeping, and they're like, this has gone too far.
This asshole has crossed the line.
And I'm like, really? You guys weren't worried about the raping, but the shoe stealing, that's the line.
It's because he was stealing from his own friends.
If Danny will steal the shoes of his friends, there is no crime he will stop at.
We crossed the line a while back, boys. It's it was the partial rape.
Right, all of the rest of Tortilla Flats is like, guys, this is like, I'm glad you're finally gonna do something about this, but really, like, my daughter's in therapy now. Could you?
They didn't have that back then.
Right. My bad.
No, they just had to hurriedly marry the daughter off because now she was sullied. So, so it all kind of culminates in Danny selling the house to Torelli for $25, and they write up this fakey receipt and a bill of sale, and Torelli marches it to the house that the men are all still staying in and is like, haha, you have to move because now I own the house. Here is the only proof that I own this house.
But even before that, he has like this comical monologue where he's just by himself. It's as like he's muttering to himself, and he's like, nest of snakes, they are a pestilence. They're not so bad one-on-one, but all together, Lord save me, I must destroy them, I must root them out from this earth. And I'm like, what is this comic? Like, this guy has been basically a non-entity. He's just kind of a character who they steal from before this. And now suddenly, he's coming up here like Iago in Othello, ranting about how he's going to have his revenge.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Which honestly, I would have liked
nowhere.
I would have liked this book so much more if it was all from Torelli's point of view.
Can we get that? Can you write that fanfic? That Tortilla Flat fanfic.
It'd be so popular on AO3.
Everyone is asking for it. I mean.
Oh man.
And so he marches into the house and he's like, "This is the only proof of purchase I have." So they steal it from him and burn it. And then Torelli's like, "Oh shucks, guys, you beat me."
The big moment of crisis immediately resolved.
Yep. There was no threat whatsoever.
No tension.
And Torelli continues to sell them wine after the fact.
Right. He's just like, well, I guess we'll just go back to this. Status quo.
You got me. That was my bad, guys.
I feel like these stories, these like chapters were written as individual stories.
Yeah.
Like, because a lot of them could be standalone. And it was that same kind of feeling where I feel like Steinbeck wrote certain parts of the book first and then came back. So I feel like he wrote the ending of this where everybody's still buying wine from Torelli before he wrote this section where Torelli turns into a comic book villain.
Yeah, I could see that. It definitely felt like a really bad sitcom, sort of, like where everything resets at the end of the episode and goes back to normal.
Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, he's basically the only, besides the men themselves, Torelli is the only like negative force in this book. The rest is like just this lackadaisical look into these people's lives at a period of time where they owned a house. Or they had access to a house, I guess I should say. And then we forgot to talk about how Joe Portuguese came to live with them. Big Joe Portuguese. Guess what? He's Portuguese.
Well, I looked this up because I was like, what is up with the Portuguese thing? Mm-hmm. So I looked it up, and I guess Portuguese is kind of like a slur, so maybe we shouldn't be saying it, but it's in this book, so
I'm so sorry.
Know. Yeah,
I did not realize.
Right, me too. Like, but I don't really know because it doesn't seem like a major slur.
Okay. Yeah, well, I just thought it was kind of like that was how they said it, so it was like phonetically.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. But then I did find that there are apparently a lot of Portuguese jokes that are still like what I stumbled across a Yelp page that was like, "Hey guys, I'm throwing
Yelp page."
Yes.
What?
Yes. Stay with me.
Okay.
I stumbled across a Yelp page or a post where the guy was like, "Hey guys, I'm throwing a Portuguese party over the weekend.
Oh.
Anybody have any good Portuguese jokes?" And I was like, what the fuck?
This sounds so distasteful.
This is so
Can
distasteful.
you leave that user a bad Yelp review? Like, 1 star, you're an asshole.
Well, and then all of these other people came in with all of these jokes, and they were essentially, like, I'd heard all the jokes before, but they were all blonde jokes. It was all blonde jokes, except with nationalities instead of blondes being dumb. It was Portuguese people are dumb. And this was from specifically someone in Hawaii, and all the people responding were Hawaiian. So I'm wondering if there's some situation in Hawaii where Portuguese people are considered super dumb. Like, I don't know what's going on with that, but it was very interesting. And then there were a couple other pages that were like Portuguese jokes, and I was like, Oh, so this is like a thing in
This is
certain
a thing.
places.
Huh.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow,
Weird.
I feel educated now. I did not know anything about that. I really
Yeah.
just honestly thought he was writing out phonetically how they were saying this guy's
I
nationality.
suspected from a lot of the other stuff in this book that there might be something racist behind it, but because he's also the darkest skinned of them, I'm pretty sure. They call him black multiple times too.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
see, I missed out on all of that. I think that was mid book that he was introduced. So at
Yes.
that point, I was like, and just like going forward. But yeah, he was a fun character.
His characterization was that he was stupid and wound up in jail a lot. Like that was his
he
character.
he liked being in jail because, well, specifically, he liked being in jail when not in the army.
Yeah. Yeah, because in the army, in jail, they made you do work.
Yeah.
Whereas in Tortilla Flats, when you go to jail, the jail keeper lets you get drunk.
And then
usually you just
sometimes
run out
lets you
together.
out of jail. It's not a
So
good
different
jailer.
experiences.
But it's okay, guys, because at the end of the book, he gets removed as the jailer anyway, and everyone makes a big stink out of it because now they don't want to go to jail.
And everyone used to like going to jail.
Yeah, because
Oh.
that's where John Steinbeck thinks these characters belong, I guess.
Yeah. They just enjoy jail so much. They don't
must.
mind being incarcerated.
Yeah, they must. That's why they're there all the time. That's why they keep doing
Obviously.
these things. They must love jail.
Obviously.
That's
That's
the
what
only
it is.
explanation. But yeah, so Big Joe is introduced as he is discharged from the army belatedly because he was in jail. And the first thing he does when he gets to Tortilla Flat is get very drunk, burn down a whorehouse, and then goes back into jail. So when he is finally released, the men have all been living together for a while, and he finds Pilon in the middle of the night walking towards the woods, and Pilon tells him it is St. Andrew's Eve.
Oh,
Which-
yeah.
Apparently is a night of the year where if you are in the woods, you can see a faint like moonbeam or some sort of glowing light which marks a treasure spot, and you can dig up treasure that night and become rich, because I guess there were a lot of shipwrecks around Monterey and Tortilla Flat that allows this to be a thing. I don't know. I didn't understand it. So these two team up. They do find a glowing spot in the woods, but instead of digging it up that night, because they said, oh, everyone's out and about tonight, let's not dig up the treasure tonight. Let's wait until tomorrow night to dig up the treasure. They hang out in the woods for a day, dig up the treasure, but it's like some sort of government thing. Like I didn't understand.
Yeah, I think it was some sort of survey thing, like
Yeah, a geodetic survey,
yeah.
which was basically just a slab of concrete. So I don't know. It was like this very weird, like randomly magical, realistic sort of chapter of this book where, or they were just very drunk and thought that they saw a glowing light.
The explanation.
But the fact that they were able to dig something up is pretty funny,
I guess.
But apparently it's a crime to dig up these slabs of concrete that the United States government left in the ground for whatever reason, and so they get really upset, drink a bunch of wine, and Big Joe is somehow invited to live with these men in the aftermath.
Yeah.
So those are our characters. John Steinbeck likens them to Arthur and his round table.
Right, which I did
At the beginning of the book?
get. I do
Yeah.
not understand.
Yeah, they weren't very chivalrous. They weren't very...
I don't understand. Here's the thing. I don't
They didn't go
understand
on quests?
Right.
I don't know.
Everybody, and here's the thing, even now, like, people, when they're talking about this, they're like, oh, it's like King Arthur, but with paisanos. And I'm like, but it's not, though, because it has absolutely fuck all to do with that. There's no similarities besides that it's a guy who gets a bunch of people together, and they kind of live together, sort of, which, like, not really super clear, like...
Yeah, it's just kind of a mess.
Which to me, I'm like, this does have a somewhat similar feel to an ancient English balladry tradition, if we want to tie it to something, which is fucking Robin Hood. Like, why
Yes,
did he not say
exactly.
this is
Why
Robin Hood?
Yeah,
Why are
I
you
would
trying
have
to
been
make him
so
King
much more
Arthur?
on board with that. I mean, like,
Right.
yes, steal from
I
those
mean-
rich people. Steal from Torelli, who
Right.
hashtag Torelli did nothing wrong, but
I get one of those in there. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's very, I don't understand why he decided, and I feel like he wrote this and he's like, had all of these weird interludes where they start talking in Old English, which is not very good
Yes.
Old English, but they start saying thee and thou and thine and such.
Yes, I was just about to mention that. It's so
Uh,
annoying.
and he wrote the whole thing and he's like, wait, why did I have these characters do this? This isn't how they would talk. It's
Why do
kind of
they randomly know Latin?
right. And he's like, I guess I don't know. I'll just say it's like King Arthur's court or something. That'll explain it. And then he just tacked that on to the end because
Yeah, yeah.
it has nothing to. There's no Lancelot figure. There's no Guinevere stand-in. You know.
Yes, there's no great love at all. And I don't know, like I read someone's synopsis of how like Danny starts out as Arthur and then his more erratic behavior makes him Lancelot towards the end of it. And I was just like, but no. I don't
Right.
know.
I mean, by that standard, like everything is a King Arthur analogy.
Yeah.
Like, oh, Harry Potter, you know, books 1 through 4, Harry Potter's totally Arthur, and then book 5, Harry Potter's Lancelot because he behaves erratically. Like, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it was a very loose connection. I mean, yeah, it was a bunch of dudes that palled around together and
Right.
had like misadventures, I guess, but there wasn't anything epic or grand. Maybe that's the point. Like it was epic and grand to them, but not to anyone else. But I don't know. It was, yeah, very loose connection to me.
Yeah. Did we talk about how this book actually ends?
Oh yeah, we can mention how the book ends. Danny fucking jumps off a cliff and dies.
And then they burn the house down.
And then they burn house A gets burnt down because it was the end of an era. So, like,
And
I mean,
surely we'll have no need for that house.
Yeah. So after he has this whole like spell of going out and committing crimes and getting super drunk, they bring him home and he's all sad sack about whatever. I guess the pressures of being a homeowner and the responsibility that weighs down on him is too much. So they decide to throw Danny the biggest party that anyone has ever seen. And for some reason, all of Tortilla Flat gets behind this party effort, even though all of these men have done is steal from them and annoy them and have sex with them and then leave them for high and dry. Like, there was nothing in this book that would show that these men have built up any goodwill towards any of these other citizens of Tortilla Flat. But for some reason, they all rally together to host the greatest party with, like, what was it, like 45 gallons of wine and so much food and decorations and everything and music. Danny gets rip-roaring drunk at this party and then violently drunk, and he runs off, and when they find him, he's at the bottom of a 40-foot cliff, and they bring him back to the home and he dies. It was very anticlimactic. His funeral is a few days later, but none of his friends, none of his roomies could attend the funeral because their clothes weren't nice enough, and they didn't want to dishonor Danny's memory by attending a funeral in garbage clothes. So they hid in the grass of the cemetery and watched the funeral from afar. And then went back, and because they didn't want anyone else to live in this house that they had so many good memories in, they burnt it to the ground. And that is how the book ends.
Can we talk about the dead baby chapter?
Oh my god, I totally forgot about that until you just... I read that so late at night that it was like, to me, it felt like a fever dream. Like, what was that?
I'm trying to figure it out. I'm sure there's like a symbol or theme or something, or like the baby is Danny. I don't know. But essentially there's a bunch of chapters where, like, episodic sort of chapters where stuff happens. Yes. And like you said, kind of like a sitcom, everything gets wrapped up at the end of the chapter. But in this one particular one, this young man shows up in town. He's sitting like on a curbside waiting for a job, and Jesus Maria finds him, and Jesus Maria is like the nice one of the group. He's about to be arrested, and Jesus Maria talks the officer out of it and takes this boy home to the house, and the boy has a baby with him, and he tells him this whole story. The baby's sick, and he tells him this whole story about how he was in the army in Mexico, and he became a corporal, and then he married this pretty young girl who they had the baby together, and then she left him for a captain. And now he's traveled here to find work, and he wants the baby to grow up to be a general. And then they're like, okay, this baby is sick, this baby needs a doctor, and then the baby dies. And that's
Yes.
like the chapter.
It was
And then
so
he leaves,
weird.
he fucks off, and he's not in the rest of the book. Like, I
Yeah,
thought he
he's
was
like,
gonna
well, I
be
guess I gotta go back home now.
right. I thought he was gonna be like their new roommate. He
Me
was gonna be the
too.
depressing one or something. But
No, that
no,
was Danny.
that ended up being Danny. Yeah, he just like fucked off, and I was like, okay. And I assumed just left the dead baby there.
Yeah, they
I'm
didn't
assuming.
discuss what they did with the dead
Right.
baby's body.
Whatever.
I don't know. They just covered it up with the blanket and ignored it for the rest of the book, I guess.
It's just sitting in this house along with the like 18 blue chalk circles, because every day they draw a blue chalk circle for where the dogs are
Where
supposed
the
to stay.
dogs are allowed to be. Well, the dogs
like-
probably ate the baby then.
Oh. I mean,
I don't know. I mean, there was nothing. They didn't mention anything else.
this whole episode, it was just, yep, that's the end of the chapter. We're never going to discuss this
It
again.
was bizarre.
It was so
And it was
weird.
like they described the way the baby died, and like
Yes.
they looked
It
in
was a
on it.
lot.
They put it in a box and they like looked in on it to check on it, and it was seizing. And the guy, the dad of the baby, was like, he's probably fine. Like, he was not concerned at all that his
Like, I
child
know-
was
I
dying.
know that whole episode has to be an allegory for something, but I cannot figure out what it is.
I don't know if I care enough to figure out what it is. I don't. Let me Google Tortilla Flat dead baby. Let's see what I get. Safe search off.
I mean, it just had the feel of like when you read like an allegorical story where you're like, oh, I'm trying to think. There's one by Bram Stoker that's very similar where it's like two kids and they end up killing each other. It's a whole thing. But the same way, I'm like, this has to mean something because it's so bizarre otherwise.
Yeah. Well, like the second chapter also of Grapes of Wrath, where it's like
yeah.
it's all about the Great Depression, but
Right.
really it's just a turtle on its back.
Right. But you read that, and even if you don't know that that's, oh, this is about the Great Depression because you haven't studied that era enough or whatever, you know it's about something. Like the way it's phrased, you're like, this means he's trying to tell me about something. I just don't know what it is. And that's how I felt about this. Like, I was like, is this about like American relationships with Mexico? Is this, I don't know. I felt like this was some political commentary or some allegory of something, and I don't know what it was. But so all we're left with is this weird dead baby story.
Yeah, and even Spark Notes isn't helpful. I'm looking at the Spark Notes right now. It's
No.
like their analysis of this situation is that the baby was not worthy to take milk from the goat. Oh yeah, so they go and they quote unquote borrow milk from one of their neighbor's goats, and borrow is the term that they use
for
to
steal.
Yeah, to steal. And the baby is not worthy to take milk from the goat to satisfy its hunger, so it could be sacrificed. I don't know. I don't understand this.
I know. It's all very confusing. If you know what is up with the dead baby in this book, please write us.
Please tell us.
Please tell us what is going on.
Spark Notes also says the similarity to a story about the Knights of the Round Table is also evident, but they don't tell us what story.
I'm not familiar.
Yeah, please.
What story is that?
What dead baby story was there in?
Let me look up dead baby King Arthur.
These Google searches are going to be awesome.
Not getting too much. Cause of death of Arthur, that's not what I want. Mordred, that's clearly not it. I've got Arthur impregnates his sister and tries to drown their incest baby. But that doesn't really seem analogous.
Yeah, because this baby was already halfway dead by the time they met it.
And there was no incest involved.
Which, like, makes me question, was this guy not feeding his baby? Or
I don't know. I don't know. He was...
This whole situation is so questionable.
And I mean, just in general, the fact that his wife ran off and left the baby and didn't seem to give a single fuck.
Yeah.
That was never explained.
Maybe she didn't like you to begin with, dude. I don't know. So, and here's the chapter of, or you know how he does like the synopsises of the chapters. What do you call I don't know, like the chapter
titles?
Subheadings? It's not really a title. It's like
I think it's just a long title.
Okay. Well, the long title of chapter 10 is How the Friends Solaced a Corporal and in return received a lesson in paternal ethics. What?
Well, the lesson in ethics was that he wanted the baby to be a general, not so that because the friends all thought he wanted the baby to be a general so the baby could grow up and have revenge on the captain. But he just wanted the baby to be a general so that the baby would have a better life than him or the captain. So that's what they learned, was you should want good things for your children, which is like, that's a fine moral, but also it really doesn't have anything to do with anything else in this book.
Well, and maybe one of those good things for your child should be like food.
Feeding it? Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Seems suspect.
Well, they also, I was very confused from the beginning of this because they described him as a boy when they introduced him. But then they're like, oh, he's a corporal. He was in the army. And I'm like, okay, how old is this guy supposed to be?
I didn't know how old any of them were supposed to
be.
Be.
Well, Danny, it says at the beginning that he signed up for the war, I think, when he was 25.
Okay.
So older than 25.
Okay, so probably 30 or close to it.
Yeah. Younger than 50, because 50
That's
is
grandpa
essentially
age.
Dead.
Yeah, according to this book, not us.
Yeah, to be clear.
Along the lines of weird episodes of this book is also the story about how Big Joe found love.
What was that? That was... I don't know what was going on there.
This chapter of the book where it's raining really, really hard, and Big Joe stumbles upon this woman's front porch. Tia Ignacia is her name. And she invites him in and drinks wine with him, and like is really dropping all the hints that she wants to sleep with him. But Big Joe is oblivious to all of it, drinks the wine and falls asleep. So she starts like beating him up. He wakes up and runs off, and she chases him and it's still raining outside until suddenly they're not chasing each other. She's not chasing him anymore. She's having sex with him. And a police officer pulls up and sees them having sex in the middle of the street and is just like, well, get out of the road, and then drives away, and that's the story.
Cool.
It's such a weird series of events. Like, tell me, what is the allegory there for the King Arthur?
I don't know. I feel like that one, actually, you could probably get to King Arthur a little bit easier because there's some weird sex stuff up in there.
I was gonna say, yeah, there's a lot of like sleeping with other men's wives and young maidens and stuff in King Arthur. I guess I don't recall a story where it was like the woman being very aggressive towards the man, but I could be wrong. I'm not as familiar.
I guess you could argue like Sir Gawain, kind of, but that's all part of a trick. So like, not really at all. But she is aggressive in that one.
Yeah.
But
is that the Green Knight?
Yeah. Because her husband tells her to be aggressive.
Yeah. So she had permission. This woman was single.
This woman was just going for it.
She had no man in her life to tell her who she couldn't have sex with.
Kind of the standard in Tortilla Flat is that these women marry men or, get into partnerships with men, and it's kind of understood by everybody that it's only going to be for a little while.
Yeah.
But there is no such thing as an actual like long-term relationship in this community.
Yeah, they refer to it as being very close friends.
Yeah. And I mean, like, even when they do get married, usually the guy runs off shortly after. Like in the case of what's her face, the one with 18 children.
Oh gosh.
Teresina.
Yeah.
Where
Who
she
feeds
has
her children only beans.
Where she literally has a child born in the course of Steinbeck telling the story.
Yeah.
He's like giving the background on her, and he's like, oops, and while I've been telling the story, she just had another child. And I'm like, you're being obnoxious.
and at the end of the chapter 2, they make a comment of like, Teresina discovered that she was pregnant again, but she didn't know which of Danny's friends was responsible.
Right. Like, well, because her first kid that she has when she's 14, and she abandons it and never talks about it again. And then she gets married at 16 and has 2 kids with her husband, who then leaves. And then she just
keeps having children.
She just doesn't know where they're coming from. They're just springing forth.
It's a mystery.
It's completely unclear who the father is of any of them.
We need better sex education in Tortilla Flats specifically. But yeah, that was essentially this book. It's just these weird stories that left you like really questioning reality by the end of it, because you didn't know if what you just read was actually real life. Do people actually like this was John Steinbeck's first acclaimed work. Yeah, it was his first smash hit, Tortilla Flat. But why though? Like, what about this was appealing other than that it was exotic, you know? Like,
Yeah, I think that's honestly it. I think that people were like, ooh, these strange people who have different lives than me, and look how quaint they are with their
yeah.
stealing of things, and they're having children out of wedlock and
Oh,
loving
there's
to be in jail.
shenanigans.
Like, girl.
You need to get out a little bit more if that's the case.
Right.
Like,
which, I mean, this brings up the thing that I kind of wanted to discuss, which was, is it possible for a writer to write about a culture that is not their own in a way that doesn't totally suck? Because
that's a very good question.
I feel like in general, when the culture is the focus of the story, that should kind of be stories that are left to people from that culture, you know? Like if you're writing a story about someone and oh, they happen to be Latina or Latino, cool, whatever. But like if the point of your story is let's engage with and explore this culture, you should probably be from that culture, right? Like,
yeah, I feel like that's the case. To me, I know a lot of authors make this attempt and can do so in a respectful manner with, you know, mixed results. But I do think it is very important that we also have books written by, you know, our own voices, sort of.
Yeah.
Points of view, and that, like, surely, I guess to me, when you sit down to write a book, like, that's the story that you're meant to tell, and, like, really, that's the one you chose, like, out of, like, you couldn't think of any other ideas, you gotta...
But, I mean, it worked for him, so...
Yeah, I guess that's true. I mean, Of Mice and Men came out 2 years after this book was written, so...
Yeah.
Which, you know, that one also did well, so maybe he just should have published that one.
Well... I mean, like, I want to give him some credit for trying to... Well, I don't want to give him credit, but
yeah.
I
well,
don't
and
know.
Then that's another question, too, I guess, is, like, this book was written in 1935 about a period of time that took place directly after World War I. Like, how much leeway can you give an author from that time period for writing in the manner that they did? Like, is it fair to say, like, you get a pass because... that time period sucked for non-white people.
Right. I think the thing is that we like to excuse authors a lot of the time of being like, oh, they just didn't know better and they're a product of their culture. But there are authors who wrote about other cultures and didn't do it in a shitty manner that are from the same time period, you know, like the kind of the example that I think of a lot is talking about Native Americans. You have stuff like Last of the Mohicans, which is not as super, I would say, is not as super racist as this book, but does have problems in the way it handles Native American characters. But then you have something like Hope Leslie, which is also about a very similar time period and written at a very similar time period and deals with similar issues, but is way more respectful of the Native American characters. So, I mean, I think that a lot of times when you actually dig, you find that the idea that, oh, they just didn't know, they're just a product of their environment, it's kind of a cop-out. I feel like they could have gotten educated. They could have been more woke.
They could have been, they could have been less exploitative.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I think he definitely plays on that, like, goofball kind of don't take these people seriously because they don't have any serious problems sort of what's the word I'm looking for? I lost my train of thought. He's bad. This is bad.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Was there anything you liked in this book? What was your silver lining?
Oh my god. I don't think I had one. Like, maybe some of the language, like I read parts of this aloud to Michael because he so desperately wanted me to read it, where he was, and he made a comment like, yeah, you know, that is pretty racist, but I don't think a lot of authors would have taken the time to be so poetic about it. I mean, yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, the writing's good.
Yeah.
And honestly, like I said, I didn't hate this book on the level of hatred that I've had for some of the other books we've read. I was
Hocus
fine.
pocus.
I was fine reading it. I was annoyed by the stuff in it, but because the writing was good, the actual process of reading it wasn't terrible for me. Also, it did give me my favorite description of a friend since the many Leslie Knope and Ann Perkins descriptions on Parks and Rec. I would say it's up there with those.
Go on.
When Danny first meets up with Pilon, he says, "Pilon," he cried, "Pilon, my little fat duck of a baby friend." Which, honestly, this book was kind of worth it just for that line.
But it's at the beginning, though. You still have to read the rest of it.
So I should have stopped there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also did not relate to anyone in this book.
Yeah, I was having a hard time.
Yeah, maybe the dogs, because dogs can't do anything bad.
I kind of felt like Pirate was kind of the one who I would most want to be like if I had to pick one of the characters to be like, just because he seems like he's a good dog owner. He seems like he's got his life sorted out a lot more than a lot of these guys. He's got goals. He was
hardworking.
Yeah. So, of the group of friends, I'd probably go with Pirate, but of the characters that I actually felt most like, it would probably be like the dead baby or something. Just all of these parental expectations, and then I just die.
And you're there to serve as some moral lesson, but we don't know
everyone else, but no one really knows what to make of it.
Oh my god.
So did you have a book that you would have rather been reading this week?
Oh my gosh, yes, 100%. Yeah? I do have a specific book, though, that my friend just purchased for me as a wonderful gift.
Ooh.
We've been talking about this book for forever and been very, very curious about it. And I feel like I'm going to get a lot of judgment for this one, but don't care. I want to read it. It sounds fascinating. It is called Bear by Marian Engel.
What is it?
Bear. I have it right here.
Oh.
Hold on. Hold on. Let me make sure I have it on camera. I don't. Okay. Yes. Bear by Marian Engel. And I don't know if you can see on the cover that bear and then the naked arm wrapped around the bear.
Anna, is this a furry book?
Okay, listen.
Anna.
This is written, apparently has won Canada's highest award for literature.
Uh-huh.
She's one of Canada's most celebrated authors, and this was her last book and also most controversial. It's about a woman who falls in love with a bear and pursues a sexual relationship with it. And it sounds so bizarre. I can't wait to read it.
Anna, this is a furry book.
Perhaps it will be my gateway drug. But I almost chose it for this week's or for this fortnight's challenge because I really wanted to read it and I thought you would hate it, but you can only get it in print and it's so I didn't want to have to make you buy a physical copy of a book.
Yeah, no, we don't do that. We don't roll like that.
Super short, 122 pages. Oh. And apparently features a scene where the main female character puts honey on her genitalia.
No. Anna.
It just sounds so bizarro. I'm just curious. I'm very curious about this.
Well, you'll have to read it and report back and tell us what your new persona is.
Okay. I will do this. I will report back next fortnight because hopefully I'll have read it by then. I have promised to read it to this friend aloud a chapter a night, so
that's precious.
We'll both be educated on our personas.
Great.
I will defend this book. It has won a very.
You haven't even read it.
It has won a prestigious Governor General's Award of Canada. So.
All right. You keep showing it to the camera. But
no, because I'm reading the back. This is hilarious. The last few sentences, I guess, of the synopsis. By page 20, our librarian, because of course the main character is a librarian, our librarian has met the bear and wondered if the bear would be good company. The bear is indeed good company.
Oh my
Intimate
God.
company. Shocking company.
Hannah.
I just want the experience. I just want to be able to say I've read it. Yeah, what trash would you rather be reading?
I've got two this week. One of them I'd rather be reading because I'm supposed to be reading it for a class right now and I'm really behind. I chose to read this instead of
Nice.
I chose to read Tortilla Flat instead of it, so now I'm even further behind. But it's Madame Bovary, which I've read before and I actually enjoy and think is a pretty good classic.
Oh, wow.
So that's kind of my one that sort of goes along with what we were reading this week, in that, I mean, I guess they're both classics, whatever. But then the actual thing that I would really, 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 really rather be reading right now is Tempests and Slaughter, which is the newest book by Tamora Pierce.
Oh my gosh, I forgot that came out. I need that in my life.
And it's the Numair book. It's the one that is based on the love interest for her second oldest book series, his prequel. And she's been talking about writing it for over a decade, and I've literally been waiting to read it for over a decade, and it just came out.
It's been so long since she's come out with a new book.
Well, she's come out with a few
or a new series, I guess I should say.
Yeah, maybe? I think her last series, well, and even this one, I mean, it's in the Tortilla universe. I mean, they all are, except for the ones that are in the Circle universe. Anyway, this is getting, whatever, too much into it. But to anybody who listens to this podcast more than a couple episodes probably realizes that my tendency to pick books leans towards speculative fiction, and Tamora Pierce was one of the first speculative fiction writers that I ever got into. She's one of my favorite authors of all time. I love her books so much, and this book has literally been a book that she has been talking about writing for over a decade, and it's about the backstory for one of her characters from her second series in the Tortilla universe, and I love him so much, and I just want to read this book. And I have it in my possession. It is sitting down on the coffee table, and I couldn't read it because I had to read fucking Tortilla Flat.
Oh, I'm so sorry. That is the most disappointing thing I've ever heard in my life.
All right, so I think that pretty much wraps it up for this book. Since
Thank God.
Challenged you this week, that means next fortnight it is your turn to challenge me. Do you have a book that you would like to, that you think I'll hate?
I do. And I think you'll hate it for a couple of reasons.
Okay.
The first of which is it's a genre we have not explored yet.
Okay.
While we have done a young adult novel or two on the podcast, we have not done a scary book or a meant to be scary book. It's a YA novel, so I'm not sure how scary it will be. And it's actually a book that's been subject of a little bit of controversy online, just simply because people were very disappointed in it, I think.
Okay.
It didn't live up to standards. So, are you familiar with Stephanie Perkins?
Yeah, it sounds familiar. What else has she written?
She's
Anna and the French Kiss in that series.
Anna and the French Kiss.
Lola and the Boy Next Door.
And
I Learned the Happily
Josh,
Ever After.
Yeah, I hated that one. The first two were all right though.
Anna the French Kiss
this is a contemporary horror novel written by romance author Stephanie Perkins called There's Someone Inside Your House.
Oh.
So let's go on to the Goodreads synopsis of There's Someone Inside Your House. Love hurts. Makani Young thought she'd left her dark past behind her in Hawaii, settling in with her grandmother in landlocked Nebraska. That sounds awful, first of all.
What a downgrade. Sorry, Nebraska.
She's found new friends and has even started to fall for mysterious outsider Ollie Larson, but her past isn't far behind. Then, one by one, the students of Osborne Hugh begin to... Osborne Hugh? Is that supposed to be Osborne High?
Probably.
I don't know. Typo Goodreads. Come on, Goodreads librarians, get on it. The students of Osborne Hugh High begin to die in a series of gruesome murders, each with increasingly grotesque flair. As the terror grows closer and her feelings for Ollie intensify, Makani is forced to confront her own dark secrets.
See, it's interesting because I pulled this up on her website as you read it along, and literally there is no mention of this Ollie character in the synopsis she has on her website.
Weird.
It's scrubbed. Every time you mentioned him, it's not mentioned at all. So I'm wondering what that's about.
Yeah, that's interesting. I guess maybe her publisher wanted to go one way and she wanted to go another, but I don't know. I'm excited to read it for the podcast. A lot of the People I follow on Goodreads that normally read young adult literature have given it pretty low reviews.
I'm excited that we're doing a horror novel. It kind of surprises me it took us this long to get to one, because when we first sat down and talked about types of books that we hated, that was like my number one thing was scary stories, because I get scared very, very easily. So either this book is going to be good, but I will still hate it because I'll be scared the whole time, or it will just be terrible like everything else we read.
Yeah,
so,
I'm hoping for a total cheese fest. So there's that to look forward to. The cover of the book is like hot pink, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Again, this doesn't bode well for the scariness of it, but
no. But I'm looking forward to it. It should be a fun hate read instead of just a angry hate read.
Yeah, which is how I felt about this book. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, that about wraps it up for this fortnight's podcast. If you guys know what the deal is with Hawaii and the Portuguese, or if you know what the allegory is supposed to be in that dead baby scene, feel free to write us. You can email us hatereadcast@gmail.com. You can also always tweet at us at hatereadcast on Twitter.
Yeah, and if you send us some lovely fan mail, we will read it on the podcast.
Yes. Make sure to follow us wherever you get your podcasts, wherever this is coming from.
Yes, on iTunes, on Stitcher, on Google Play Music, on SoundCloud,
We're
on
on
Pocket Cast.
so
We're
many things,
everywhere.
You guys. We're everywhere. We still have 4 listeners.
On that t-shirt you're about to make us one of the 4 listeners. We're everywhere.
Thanks as always to Ben Cope for providing our intro and outro music. You guys can check out a link to his YouTube in the show notes below.
But yeah, thanks for listening, guys. We appreciate it.
We love having you here.
We hope you stay. And in the words of John Steinbeck, thou knowest not what bitches women are.
Very good, very good.
Yes, I was just reminded of at Goody Reds. Which, again, I don't know if that's a past episode or a coming up episode.
Oh, gosh, I can't remember. Goody Red.
Goody Red. I don't remember. Oh, well.
Oh, well, we'll find out.
Yep, as will our listeners.